Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this webinar. Today, we're going to be talking about how to turn your marketing data into actionable insights. And my name is Rachel, and this is Stacy, and we are both part of the EMA team. Stacy is our Salesforce guru. She knows all things data, insights, and so much more when it comes to Salesforce. And I'm the marketing operations manager here at EMA. We're going to be just talking about what insights are really valuable that create that true alignment between marketing and sales, because we all know that data doesn't lie, and we really want to be able to align with the sales team so that we can have insights that are going to be valuable for both sides, set the right KPIs, and have the right conversations before analyzing data. So today I'm going to have Stacy just give us 5 different types of data and insights and dashboards that are really valuable on the Salesforce side that can really help the marketing team know exactly what to aim for. Stacy, I'm going to hand this over to you.
Thank you, Rach. So before I get started talking about the dashboards and Salesforce and what you can pull and everything, I want to say first, it's really important to talk to your leadership team, your VPs, your C-level, even your board, and find out what they consider to be important KPIs or the metrics that they want to see. The last thing that I want anyone to do is to make like a lead source creation report or a campaign report and show it and say, look, we're so successful, and then have your board turn around and say, we don't care about that at all, show us something else. So first off, I'm going to talk about the dashboards that you need today, but talk to your team first. Every business is different. What you need and what your company considers good KPIs is going to be totally unique. So find out that information and then take this as a kind of guide to how you can start building and using that in your company. So first, of course, we always want to start with marketing KPIs. Once we know what is an indicator for our company, a lot of times, most commonly, we see lead creation and MQLs. Those are really important metrics for marketing. So with leads creation, we're looking at how many leads do we get every week? How many leads do we get every month? How many MQLs do we have trending? And it's really important also to know what your company is looking for as far as time frame. So we don't want to go with a monthly report when people are actually really interested in week over week change, or vice versa. We don't want to get too down in the weeds if what they're actually looking for is a quarterly view. So find out that information first before you start building your dashboards. But definitely those 2 metrics, lead creation, MQLs, your marketing qualified leads. If you want to look at leads converted, this is a good place to do that, because certainly one of the goals of marketing is to make things for sales to sell to. So leads that get converted to contacts or to opportunities, those are great things to look at as well. And then almost certainly you're going to have quarterly goals or monthly goals. You can use a little speedometer on your dashboard to kind of see how you're trending against your current period goals, and then trending over time as well.
Yeah, that's all great information, and it's so true. In aligning with your team and knowing what to expect, because it's also important here to note as well, like knowing the history, knowing what historically has been the average amount and what the timeframes have been, so that you can properly analyze and say, okay, maybe you've been tracking it weekly, but maybe that's not necessary. Maybe we should move to monthly, or maybe you've been tracking it monthly, but quarterly is what would make more sense for year-over-year data and metrics. So yeah,
and
that's great.
Knowing the patterns too. If your company always goes to a trade show in February, you're going to see a spike in net new inbound leads every February. You don't want to be confused about where that spike came from. You want to be able to answer people when they ask you questions about one-offs in your data. So that's a really important thing to know as well. So the next most common dashboard I think that we run for marketing is campaign success. So if you are familiar with Salesforce at all, the campaign object at a high level is really just a way of grouping a bunch of random people together for any purpose. In marketing, commonly, it's trade shows, form fills, list pulls, newsletters, any kind of event, anything where you're grouping a bunch of people together to do something. Those are your campaigns. Now, a campaign success is going to mean something different for every kind of campaign. So it's really important to know what it is for each kind. For a newsletter, a campaign success might be they click on a link in the newsletter. For a trade show, the campaign success might be that they actually stop at your booth. For whatever kind of campaign it is, it's important to know what that success is. A lot of times in Salesforce, you're going to have your member statuses set up and you'll have the responded box. So typically what we're doing here for this kind of dashboard is we are listing out all of our campaigns and we're looking at all the numbers. So what we want to see: total members in campaign, number of responded in campaign, leads converted in campaign, ops created. We want to look at dollar amount on the ops that were created. And then a really common thing I think that's interesting and some people sometimes forget about is looking at types of campaigns against each other. So look at your January, your February, your March, your April newsletters and see which ones are performing well against each other. There's a lot of really cool marketing tools out there that Rach can definitely talk about, and they do really good analysis on this stuff too. But when we're talking about sales VPs and presenting metrics, people like Salesforce, they want to see a dashboard, they want to get their dashboard once a week. So if you can take that marketing data from Marketo or HubSpot or wherever you have it and push it into Salesforce, turn it into a campaign success dashboard, that's going to be really interesting and a really good visual for you to share.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes to all of that. And I think as well, like you said, it really helps the marketing team evaluate what content is working and what's not. You know, we can actually piece together, you know, why certain things are pushing the needle forward and why they're not. And that's absolutely so important. And these, like, getting the right metrics here is what will really help with that as well, like you said. So it's great. Great note.
And one thing to call out specifically real quick is that when you're the Salesforce admin or when you're the person building dashboards, you're not going to have all of the answers. The biggest thing I get asked that I can't always answer is why. So why was there more clicks in the March newsletter, but not the January or the February? I don't know. I'm not the marketing expert. I leave that to our team at EMA. But if you're the Salesforce admin, just be prepared that if you see anything out of the ordinary, people are definitely going to ask you about it. And you might not have the answers, and that's okay. But you want to be able to give people the ability to get the answer. So whether that's you have a marketing expert on hand, or you're able to invite that person with you, even better. That way you can get sort of the right information. You definitely don't want to be guessing during that kind of meeting. So one more thing I want to talk about is leads by source. And I call this out specifically for its own dashboard because it's really important and it can get lost in something like your marketing KPIs. And once people really start digging into it, they realize just how important it is. So when we're talking about leads by source in Salesforce, we're talking about literally the lead source field. And those are sort of how leads got added into your database. Some of them are going to be coming from list pulls. Maybe you're doing Zoom info. Some of them could be people that just came to the website and filled out a form. Some of them could be, you know, your sales rep just entered some people by hand because he met them before and he happens to know their email address. So knowing where the leads came from is critically important because you're going to be able to see where your potential pipeline is coming from. So you're going to be able to take all those leads and sort of break them apart by source and say, okay, well, you know, our Zoom info list polls are actually not very successful. We're pulling a lot of leads, but none of them get converted. Whereas maybe our form fills probably are going to have a much higher success rate for conversion, because those are the ones where the prospect actually took a proactive action. So looking at those sources and what happens to the leads after is going to be super important. I think is worthy of its own call out for like something like a dashboard where you have some really detailed metrics around it. And then the other really important thing that marketing and sales teams always care about is, of the sources, which ones are marketing and which ones are sales. And so not that there's a competition between the two, it's really more of like, we want it to be a really like symbiotic relationship where we support each other, but we still want to know how are our marketing efforts doing compared to things that the sales reps are doing on their own. Because remember, we want to be providing as much as we can for them, but if they're going out and they're having a lot of success with the things they're doing on their own, then there's no reason that marketing can't have that same success, and we can do their same efforts and take some of that labor off of their backs.
Yeah, totally. That's a great point. And I think too, this also goes into like how you build out your marketing plan and how you decide, for example, Zoom info list poll. If you're going to be polling lists and targeting a specific group of people, you want to make sure that's the right group of people. And that really comes from knowing your sales team and the end users there who are interacting with the client. So, if marketing is just guessing and throwing stuff at the wall, that lead source is not going to be performing well, and we're not going to be getting the turnout that we need. So that alignment is so key within the entire process from start to finish to when we're analyzing metrics. So it's a great point.
Great, perfect. So following from that, the next thing that happens with a lead is we want it to turn into pipeline, right? So the next most important thing that we want to report on, or that we want dashboards or metrics on, is the pipeline. And now a lot of marketing teams, I think, focus heavily on the first three things we talked about: lead sources and KPIs, MQLs, and Rach and I, live and breathe MQL. Those things are super important to us. But what we also want to pay attention to is the sales pipeline and what kind of sales pipeline we've generated. We don't want to forget about that, because at the end of the day, you can make all the leads in the world you want, but if you're not getting pipeline and you're not getting closed won business, it's not doing you any good, right? So I think it's a really important thing to sort of do not a whole sales dashboard, because we're not the sales team, but we do want to know of what we have generated, is it turning into closed won business? Because of course the same rules apply of, if what we're doing is not working, we shouldn't be doing that. We should be doing something else. So even taking any of our previous dashboards, any of our previous reports, like our leads by source, and saying, okay, well, that's feeding into a pipeline. And we're saying, okay, well, our trade show, we're getting this many leads and they're turning into this much pipeline, which then turns into this much dollar amount. That's really great information to have, and over time. So look through your past, look through your existing records in your database and see what has happened in the past. How much closed won pipeline did we have from marketing sources quarterly for the past 3 years? Go all the way back. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to give you a sort of baseline to look at and see what is typical, what should be shooting for. What kind of things can we expect to see in this area?
Yep, absolutely. And I think it also helps us analyze, so if we are generating a certain number of MQLs and they're moving down the pipeline, maybe they become an SQL, where does that conversion stop? Like if it's not converting as high as we want, we're not meeting those goals, why? We can actually go in and figure out why. Like what's that interaction look like? What's our process? What's our sales process? And I think that's really important to just have data on anyways, so we know what part of the pipeline we need to be improving on all the time. So it's great.
So the next thing that we want to think about, and this is actually our last dashboard, but I think is going to be the most interesting one for marketing teams specifically, is ROI on your marketing efforts and your marketing campaigns. Every marketing team I've ever worked with, from like huge companies down to startups that have 2 or 3 people, every marketing team has a budget. And you take that budget and you buy a marketing tool and you do some events and you hire marketing support teams and you do all sorts of things with that budget. But what we want is we want it to generate money for the company. That's our business. So if we're not doing that, then we're not doing our jobs in marketing. But what's really important in that is to know how much your campaigns cost and what you're getting from those campaigns. There's a few fields in Salesforce. They're really just simple currency fields on the campaign. You can add more currency fields, but what you really want to see is how much is this campaign costing us? What is the cost per lead that we are getting? And what is our ROI on those? So do we have certain campaigns that generate more pipeline than others? And typically we see form fills are generally more successful because, again, those are the things where someone is proactively coming to you. So they already have a high level of interest. But everything that you do, every campaign, as long as you just put in a few simple currency, what amount did you spend on the campaign, you're going to be able to track how much you got back, and you'll be able to see if that campaign was worth it or not. And then when you start looking at your campaigns by type, you're going to see some trends. So you're going to see this, this kind of campaign is typically more successful. Let's invest in doing more of those campaigns. And this other campaign is typically not as successful, so maybe we don't focus on that one as much. So that's a really interesting one. A lot of people forget to fill out those fields in Salesforce, and I think it's because the people who are creating the campaigns in Salesforce don't actually know how much the campaign costs or what's being invested into it. So it's really just, a really small piece of data that you can just type in, and you're going to get so much out of it in the end.
Yeah, that's really, really great to know. And I think that's so true. And that's also, it just feeds into what we're talking about here about that alignment and involving everyone into the process, into the campaign, into what the outcome needs to be, so that all the goals are aligned. Because I know you've seen it, Stacy, but sometimes, marketing has a very specific goal, and like, this is what's going to measure my success or our success, the company's success in this campaign. But the sales team is still maybe using an old piece of, sales jargon or something in their pitch, and it's completely off from what our end goal actually is. So I think it's so important to just keep that alignment and keep the data as accurate as possible. If we have it, if we have that number, if we know that number down to the T, it should be in there. Why not?
Right.
So we have more to
Exactly.
report on. So it's great to note. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I think it's great hearing it from a sales perspective, a sales operations expert, that, you've seen it all. And, I think this is a really important conversation to continue having between marketing and sales, and how to create that further alignment. So it's great data. At the end of the day, that's what's going to show us those successes, the big wins, and also, what we may need to do less of or more of. And also just reminding ourselves too, like, if what we need to look at and what we might need to change. It might not even be the campaign. It might need to be the audience. It might not, it could be so many different factors. And this is what's going to really help us get to that.
And this is why it's so important for your Salesforce admin or the person who's creating the reports and dashboards to have a connection with someone like you, or someone in marketing, or someone in sales, because like I said earlier, I'm not going to have the answers to why anything is a certain way. I can't tell you why one newsletter performed better. I can't tell you why one campaign was more expensive than another. I don't know. I'm reporting on the data that's in Salesforce. So it's really great to be able to have someone to be able to answer those questions, or to be able to even just look at it and say, oh, when you're talking, here's the things that are interesting and you can call these out, or these are the things, here's what happened in this month. We were on company holiday for 2 weeks. So of course the numbers are going to be lower that month, whatever it happens to be.
Right. Yeah, that's so good. And also knowing to prepare for that. I think a lot of the time, especially, working with startups and working with people that are just going to market all the time, I think it's important to note the trends that we already know as well, like the history. Like we know that historically the holidays are a slower time. Historically, just as an example off the top of my head, like September is a month that more people want to invest in education, right? Like that's just a trend we know, because that's kind of the mindset of the overall population in general. So I think that's great to know and to bring to the table, when working with companies, or, especially if they're newer and this is a very new thing that you're putting out to market. So it's awesome.
Yeah, great.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Like I said, this is a great conversation. It needs to continue happening between marketing and sales teams. And, if anyone watching has any questions about how to create further alignment, or has questions on how to operate, your current tech stack, or you need an audit of that, please reach out. EMA is a full service end-to-end agency, and this is what we specialize in. And, we would love to have that conversation with you. All right. Have a good day, guys.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.